Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host, Raider. This Spotify video, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a deeper dive into the combined nonsense of the Washington Post and Lieutenant Dan's whatever you want to call that was at the 10/29/2025 Senate hearing. Now, I want to do it on Spotify because I try to keep my a little bit more professionalism in the YouTube channel. So we're going to go a little bit just into how I feel about it. Now, like I said, I'm not an expert on anything. Equal to Lieutenant Dan in that I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just as much an expert as he is, if not more, actually, because I've actually worked in the field. So, of the two of us, I have more expertise than he does, which is funny, but that's neither here nor there. Now, kind of what I wanted to talk about is, it's kind of the entire veteran community is fired up about it. The Washington Post, they've got an axe to grind. They've got a clear message that they want to do. Same thing with the people that invited Lieutenant Dan to that meeting. Everybody has some kind of ulterior motive to try to get to a means to an end. So the Senate hearing was a means to an end. The Washington Post started stuff which naturally got the veteran community to knee jerk to it and caused a Senate hearing, which allowed certain bad actors to once again bring it to the forefront and say it. Now, the main problem that I have with all of this is that, you know, the veteran community and the people who report that they are on the side of the veterans, they don't need to capitulate to this. Like, they don't need to actually, allow this to go on. You have if you have subscribed to the Washington Post, unsubscribe to that. If you don't feel like their message is true, like, if you don't feel like they're being authentic in their message, then you need to actually take some action with the power of the purse, or the power of the wallet. You know? Cancel them. I mean, I number one, I've never subscribed to them, but if I did, I would yank that so fast you'd hear a sonic boom. Okay. So that's the first thing. I mean, they can be idiots if they want to. Like, they can be disingenuous. They can gin up the facts all they want. This one time somebody did something bad, which means that all of these people are bad. Cool. I mean, the argument's easily, the Washington Post argument is easily refuted, right? On a generalization type scale. You can't generalize it to everybody. Also, here's some of the things that I want to talk about in this. I'm just going to be all over the place with this, but like, I'm almost certain, I have a very strong certainty that if the people who wrote the Washington Post article, if they went to Walmart or something like that and had chemicals dumped on them, and those chemicals caused them to have a disability, do you think that the Washington Post authors would sue Walmart for compensation for their disability that they were caused, such as sinusitis? Or would they walk it off and say, you know what, it's not a disability. I don't need any compensation for that? Think about that for a minute. I sure as heck know that they would seek damages for the impairment that they have. There's an entire system for that. There's attorneys for that. There's, if so and so and it caused them to spill their whatever coffee on them and they got hurt, would they sue? Damn right they'd sue. You damn right they'd sue. And you know what? I just it it boggles my mind that that would be okay. Right? No one would bat an eye to that because that's how the normal process works. But when it gets into veteran town where the military caused us to have a disability, they're like, well, it's not disability enough. You know what? Go find a recruiting office then. All the authors of those unpatriotic articles can go find a recruiting office and they can show us how it's done. I'll step aside. They can go ahead and do it if they want to. Fair enough. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I will not get in their way. And you know what? They have their right to spew their nonsense. The First Amendment, I believe in it. I defend their right to be wrong. I do. Defend it. I'll defend it with my life. But it just annoys me because it's personal, right? They're calling every single one of us a liar. Some of us are liars, sure, but not every single one of us. They don't even care to find out who the liars are. They just want to take away from everybody because they're jealous. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is that they don't have the constitutional fortitude to be able to serve their country. So they want to take away from those that did serve their country and were injured by it and actualize the contractual obligation of the federal government to compensate for those disabilities, which Congress has written into law. So, yeah, um, they're not my favorite people. They're not getting a Christmas card. But it just weirds me out that there's this sentiment out there by these jealous people, by these people that, they say the people that can't teach. Well, that's not necessarily always true because the people that can't whine about it. So if you want to be in the military so bad, go join. If you can't be in the military, shut up. It's as easy as that. Just shut up, right? Because here's how I can tell that they're disingenuous, right? Because if they say it can't be sustained, not our problem. They need to not point it at the veterans. They need to point it at the government, because they allowed us to be injured. I don't know if you noticed this, and if you weren't in the military, then I'm going to help you out with something. Okay, being in the military sucks in terms of what it does to your body. Doesn't matter what you do. You just be in there and breathe, and sometimes that is a hazard. Okay, just breathing in the military in certain situations is a hazard. I get the fact that these jealous people are so envious and so spiteful. They're envious of a disability, by the way. How stupid is that? They're just mad with disdain for envying somebody for a disability. I've never heard of this before. It weirds me out that they have this disorder, that they have this mental health issue, that they have to be so disdainful of it. Because if it was about money, I mean, the veteran community is not the first stop. I would go to the Pentagon, and since they haven't balanced a budget in X number of years, I mean more than 7, I think, that budget's out of control. You could probably tighten up the Pentagon's budget, and yeah, that would cover all of our disability forever. You know, but there's certain like little hints and factoids with how this is playing out that you can tell it's not serious, right? Because it's personal. You can tell by how the article's written. You can tell by the tone of all of these articles that they don't actually mean what they say. It's just they're saying certain things in order to open the door to what they really want to say. It's like being a racist and wanting to say the N word, and like you'll just get close to it and whatever. But you know, they want to take down the veteran community, and that's all it is. Like those authors of those articles want to take down the veteran community, and there's even some of our own, like Lieutenant Dan from the Senate committee. I don't even remember his actual name, but I just call him Lieutenant Dan. He's some kind of lieutenant, something that I guess he was in the military, and he got out of the military and got a cushy White House job. Just like all of us, right? Like just like all of us could do that got out of the military. Like wow, I so did not take up my cushy White House job. I guess I skipped it. I must not have checked the box for that, but yeah, I can tell that Lieutenant Dan's arguments, because he's number one, he's not qualified. educationally qualified to have an opinion on the topic? No, he's not. He's not a doctor. He's not anything like that. He doesn't get to compare and contrast anything. Um, from what I've been told, and now this once again is the drunk history version of all of this because I haven't actually taken Lieutenant Dan seriously enough to look up his mixtape of whatever his job application is. All I know is he's not qualified. That's it. Like that's all you need to know is that he is not qualified to make any inferences that he is making. He cited one study that I think that somebody paid for. So, if you pay for an outcome, you get an outcome. And then the study that he's talking about is that veterans who suffer from whatever, like veterans who are disability focused, I guess is the best way to put this. Veterans who are disability focused are directly at odds with their own nature of like their role and responsibility, and giving them a job makes them healthier. By not giving them a job makes them sicker. Okay. So, how can I tell that Lieutenant Dan's doesn't know what he's talking about? Lieutenant Dan's premise here is that veterans without jobs do not have, self-confidence. They don't have, it makes them sicker. So, did Lieutenant Dan cite how many veterans are currently working and accepting or, being given compensation? No. He seems to leave that out. He seems to make this erroneous inference that all veterans are disability focused and none of them work. Well, he wants to take everyone's compensation away, not just the ones that aren't working, but the ones that are working too, because that'll make us so much happier and better, you know. And there's a legal requirement for us to be compensated for our service connected disability. So he just wants to, I guess, turn a blind eye to that. But he wants everybody to get a job, which I'm not against, right? Like, I think it would be really cool if the military, once you got out, got you job training as part of your service contract. That would be cool. That's an additional benefit. That's not taking something away. That would be in addition to everything. I think that would be awesome. Like, that's not a bad idea because there is a transitionary period where veterans can go from exiting service to not having a job, and then bad habits can set in. Mental health can worsen, things like that. Yes, help them get a job. Don't take away their benefits or the ability to get them, but yeah, help them get a job. Now, one of the things that Lieutenant Dan was talking about was, that we should take away benefits and give everyone a job. Now, the problem is that training somebody to do a job doesn't give them a job. So that's how I can tell. One of the reasons why I can tell that the premise of his argument is just he threw it out there and didn't think it out. Because what job is everyone going to do? Like, what job is everyone going to do? What are you going to do? There's like however many millions of us on benefits. I don't have a statistic for how many of us don't have jobs, but I'll tell you, everyone on TDIU doesn't have a job. So how exactly is Lieutenant Dan going to find us all a job? How is he going to do that? What's the requirement for that? What would that take? Well, number one, because we already have like the 10 point, 5 point, 10 point preference for jobs, but he's actually talking about getting us a job. So what does that look like? Working at Walmart, picking strawberries. Like, what is he going to have us all do? What's the minimum threshold? Like, would it have to be like? I don't get what he's talking about. And how does he? Can you just retrain into a job? Like, let's say, like you did the vet tech program, through the VA. They have the vet tech program where you actually like get trained for computers. Well, they're laying all these people off for computers. So what happens whenever you get that training? And let's say that market's bust. What do you do then? Because the VA would be obligated to give you a job, right? So what job are you getting? Are you getting additional training? Like, what does that look like? And, based upon all of that, how do you manifest that? Would the VA just hire people? Would they hire people to be raters and VSRs and like I don't it's not very well thought out. The taking the benefits from us, very well thought out, very well thought out completely. But the actual substituting, like like false pretense that they're like, oh, we got to get you a job so you can have a better life and you can feel better about yourself. Not very well thought out. Another reason why I can tell that he's not being serious about it, like this isn't even a serious intervention that they have suggested. And I say they because Lieutenant Dan on their own didn't come up with this because once again, he doesn't have the education or the experience to come up with this on his own. This is the brainchild of somebody else that Lieutenant Dan is just the figurehead for because he's a veteran and he's lost one and or both of his legs and self-esteem and integrity. But he's lost a lot of things, allegedly. I don't know. Once again, drunk history. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. But, he doesn't want to be a veteran anymore. He doesn't want his disabilities to count for anything. I'm not going to count them as anything. He's just some rando that just did a thing. But how I can tell that they're not actually serious with this is because if they were and they actually did real big boy research on this, they would have come with some very interesting statistics. And I don't want to like help their position out, but if they were saying that like VA disability incentivizes you to be sicker, well, yeah, there is one truth to that. And that has to do with the homeless veteran community. The homeless veteran community is one instance where they are incentivized to stay homeless because if they retain their homelessness, then they are currently worse in their presentation. If they become housed, then they got better. So that incentivizes, especially individuals, veterans with severe mental illness. There's a cause and effect circumstance there that incentivizes them to stay homeless. It's very hard at times to get specific demographics of the homeless veteran community to become housed and to have it stick because there's there's a certain thing about like HUD-VASH will help you to a point. But when you start having like when you get to the poverty level of getting a job and doing things like that, you make less money than you would if you would have not gotten the job to begin with in most situations when it comes to the homeless community. So, yes, there is an actual example there. Did Lieutenant Dan find that? No. No, he didn't. Because you want to know why? Because he didn't actually research it. So, this is all just political theater to take with the intended goal of taking your benefits because if he would have come with that I would have been like okay he's serious about this and he wants to actually present a case for this narrow you know use case scenario of when maybe giving them benefits might not be appropriate versus supporting them getting them a real life job because them being disability focused and homeless is not helping them. I could have heard that argument in that very narrow case, but it definitely wouldn't have been able to be generalized to the rest of the veteran community. So, I mean, it would still fall flat on its face, except in that one narrow niche instance. But it just helps us all to understand he's not being serious about this. Okay, Lieutenant Dan and whoever's pulling the strings and paying the money for Lieutenant Dan is not serious. Now, the other thing that could have, been spoken about that I would have actually have entertained from Lieutenant Dan is, hey, look, I can show you an example of where people are incentivized to become more disabled. And it has to do with the 90 to 100%. Why the heck are they paying so much for that percentage versus 80 to 90%? So, what happens whenever they pay disability is there's this gradual uptick. Like you get X amount more, X amount more, X amount more. And then you have this balloon payment from 90 to 100%, which if they just averaged out the payments a little bit more and paid a little bit more to those that are less disabled, right? Like 40, 30% type thing. If they averaged it out and didn't make a $1,200 balloon payment or $1,300 balloon payment between 90 and 100%, people wouldn't be incentivized to go up to 100%, but they are. because they can get a third more disability for, going from 90 to 100%. However, the one thing that Lieutenant Dan and Lieutenant Dan's handlers have forgotten is that this isn't something I can just, you know what, Dan, put me in for, you know what, I feel like just becoming 100%. Today I'm 100%. No, you need a doctor to come up with that stuff. You need a doctor to actually facilitate the evidence, right? Like pulmonary function tests, you can't fake those, for like asthma and whatnot. Polyps for your nostrils, you can't fake that. That's something that's got to be there. Like I don't get it. And the Washington Post did this stuff too, where it's like they make it seem like you can just walk in and get anything that you want, and there's no like it's like so easy to get it, and it's not. It's hard. I mean, how many veterans? I've been denied a lot of times for certain stuff that I'm like, look, this is easy. This is easy. Come on, guys, you got to get this right. Like it's so easy, it's not even funny, and it takes a long time to get it. But I don't know. For me, these are just two examples, and I refuse to give any more of how I can tell that Lieutenant Dan and Lieutenant Dan's handlers, they're not serious about this. They can pretend to be as serious as they want about it. They can be like, you know what, we're really, really honestly serious about this. Sure you are. Because you haven't done the minimum amount of, research into the topic to approach it with a good faith effort. There's no good faith here. Like the Washington Post, no good faith. I can say that because I am just an average person. And I can tell you that they haven't proven anything. Have they proven that some people have committed fraud and that the agency has actually, adjudicated it and they've went to jail or prison or whatever? Yeah, cool. Good. Nobody's disagreeing that anybody committing fraud should be have the consequences of that happen to them. Nobody is disagreeing with that. What they are disagreeing with is that every single person is fraud, or that it's just not disabling enough. You know what? Go to your recruiter and sign up if you're that jealous, because that's all that is. That's jealousy. Oh, sorry, the dogs are being dogs. So anyway, that's about all I got for you on this rant, guys. On Spotify, and me and the Danes will carry on. Anyway, that's about all I got for you today. Raider out.